I want to welcome you back to our Stitch in Time series. Today we're going to be taking a reading from the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6. And while this passage really is not a very encouraging passage, I believe that through looking at it, we can see some things that will greatly help us in our lives. You know, sometimes God shares with us sometimes the negative of something to highlight the positive of it. You know, for instance, in 1 Corinthians 13, love is not rude, love is not... And so we have many principles about what love is not, as well as what love is. Here we find a doorway of a path not to take. And it's in Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. It says this, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being a priest for me. And because you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children." Now, in this passage, there really is like a going back and forth between two different audiences, and I want to just highlight some of these ideas here. First of all, God is speaking to his people and giving a reason for why his people were being destroyed or cut off or perishing from the place and purpose and experience that God wanted them to have. Isaiah says the same thing basically in Isaiah chapter 5, I think it's verse 13, where he says, "My people go into," or my people, my people go into calamity because of lack of knowledge. Or my people, captivity actually is the word, not calamity. My people go into captivity through a lack of knowledge. In other words, they become imprisoned. They go into exile. They lost their place that God had for them, a place which God desired for them to have. They were exiled and went into captivity. They lost that place through a lack of knowledge. And so we need to understand that one of the important things in our lives is a knowledge of God. This is what the children of Israel even lacked as they were trying to cross the wilderness, is they kept on lacking a knowledge and understanding of who the God was that they were serving. They had misconceptions about him. And seemingly at times they even rejected the knowledge that God tried to give them of himself. Well, first of all, we need to recognize that there are some times when we may forfeit the plan, the purpose, the promises of God in our life simply because we don't know them. We lack the knowledge. And some people are experiencing more of God because they have experienced more of a knowledge, more of a correct and precise knowledge, and it's led them into a greater dimension of God. Peter said this, and we've covered this in another place. Grace and peace are multiplied through the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord. And so one of the things we have to look at in our lives, if we're experiencing difficulties in our lives, we have to ask ourselves, is the difficulty which I seem to find myself in because of a lack of knowledge? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we need knowledge to pass through the difficulty, not simply to avoid them. But we need to understand that there are areas in our lives where we might be suffering unnecessarily because we don't have a proper knowledge. Secondarily, God began now to move from the people to his priesthood. Now in the Old Testament, not everyone was a priest. In the New Testament, they are. But in the Old Testament, he was talking of the priesthood, and he says, "Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you." Now historically, this is like talking about the priests of Jeroboam who set up the golden calves in Dan and Bethel. And these were originally Levites who then left a proper knowledge of God to serve the golden calves. And they rejected the knowledge. And probably part of that was, as priests, maybe they were not experiencing a tremendous amount of prosperity in their lives at this particular time, and it seemed more beneficial to just go with Jeroboam and reject the knowledge of God to please the people and give them a religion which is much easier for them. And because they rejected knowledge, God said, "I will also reject you." We have to be careful that the knowledge that we have, we don't reject because of convenience. Sometimes we know certain things. Sometimes the journey of God is not easy. It wasn't easy for the children of Israel to leave their places and go down to Jerusalem 3 times a year. And Jeroboam actually set up the golden calves for this purpose. He said, "It's too much to go down there. Let's just worship here. And these are your gods." And he made religion easier for them. We have to be careful that we don't reject the knowledge of God because sometimes it's difficult for us. For instance, God is asking us to forgive, or God is asking us to love our enemies. We sometimes want to reject that knowledge. We sometimes want to reject that, and God is saying, if you reject me, I'll have to reject you from fulfilling your role in your lives. And then he warns about forgetting. He said, some of you have forgotten the law of your God, and therefore I will have to forget your offspring. And it's very important, I don't believe that this is the priest, because it's difficult to reject and forget at the same time, as one commentator said. But it's dangerous to forget the laws of God. It's dangerous for us to not hold them in our hearts and in our minds, to the standard of God in our lives. And so God is saying, don't forget me. Don't perish through a lack of knowing me. And don't reject the knowledge that you have. I want to encourage you, dear saints, the knowledge that you do have, whether it's convenient or inconvenient, don't reject it. And there may be areas in your life where you recognize, I don't know God in the area of this. I don't know God in the area of healing. I don't know God in the area of provision. I don't know God in the area of relationships. I don't know God in the area of marriage. Let me not perish through my lack of knowledge. Let me seek God to know Him. And I encourage you, as you do this, you'll be freed from captivities even that you might be currently experiencing. You will come out into greater levels of peace and greater levels of grace. May God richly bless you. We look forward to being with you again in A Stitch in Time.